And we is live as you is live. Welcome back, everyone, to Miniature Dragon Comic Review, comic review cast coming to you live from Seattle, Washington, home of Crab Boats, the Fremont Troll, and of course, Emerald City Comic Con. Before we get started, I just want to say happy birthday to Griffin. Happy early 11th birthday. Tomorrow's his birthday. Just to give you a heads up, we should do an online D&D thing with your family. It is our second episode, and we have two guys on location because we're crazy. Hey, let's see what happens. As always, I'm just an RPG nerd living in a comic nerd world. DM Doc, and with me are the two comic gurus from Miniature Dragon Comics, coming to us live from Emerald City Comic Con, Alex and Woody. Hello, Alex and Woody.
Hello. Thank you, Doc. Great intro.
We are surviving the show.
It's been a great EC3.
I'm looking at some of the pictures, and they're coming through now. Everybody's going to be able to see them. They are beautiful. You guys look like you're having a blast.
Yeah, it's been a fun show.
It's definitely great to be able to meet fellow artists and a lot of exhibitors that we've met through various other conventions.
Sweet.
We'll get to do war stories.
Let me hit up some real quick stuff real fast here, and then we'll get moving on that. As always, I'm tracking Facebook and Twitter at MD Reviewcast and watching for your tweets and questions, as well as our live feed on our chat room is going on Twitch. And from last time, I just want to say that SNet Phoenix said that awesome work on the episode. You guys were deliberate, well-versed, and that they learned something from it, so thank you for that. I am now just going to take a back seat and let these two talk, and maybe I'll interrupt, just ask a couple questions about Emerald City Comic Con. And Alex, you already started, so let's start with you.
Thank you, Doc. So for me, one of the things that I like to do is pretty much this is a great time to be from an introvert to artist to an actual extrovert and go around and talk to all my wonderful favorite fellow artists and other people that I got to meet from doing the convention circuits. There are just so many talented and wonderful, loving people, like from comic strip owners to just other people that you meet. And a lot of people from the industry, especially here in the Northwest, are just fantastic to be able to talk to. Like, if you ever are looking to start your own comic book, anything, be a writer, be an artist, be a colorist, there are a great amount of people that are just willing to go like, yeah, let me answer your questions. Maybe not at the moment because I'm selling things, but, you know, hey, it's died down. Okay, let's talk business. But, you know, definitely do your research first, I would suggest, but
I've had plenty of people hunt me down to ask those very same questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had a talk with a kid from Africa one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he figured I was a comic writer and like basically got me, you know, to talk to him for about an hour, answering questions about how to make comics.
So, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that was cool. You know, the big throw for me at the show is last year I got to meet one of my favorite Transformers artists, Livio Raimondelli, kind of a tongue twister name, but I bought a print of his, and then it'll be cycling through in a second, but it's, you know, I basically wood burned this picture of Optimus Prime that he did, and I told him I was going to do it, and he asked me to bring it back this year, which I, of course, did, and so I've got a picture of him holding that piece.
And he did sign it, which I think that was really cool.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I also got to meet Chris Claremont, by the way, which it's cycling through right now, but I've got this book here that I picked up from him that he was selling. I think it was probably selling it partially because it's like, you know, one of the few books he has that doesn't have a contract attached to it with Marvel. But I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it's an interesting kind of he said it was like a take on King Arthur, or, you know, that kind of a time period.
One of the things that I can say is it really reminds me of those old from the comic strips.
Yeah,
Prince Valiant.
Yeah, I thought so too. It had a nice.
At first, when I was like looking at it, I thought, "Is this Prince Valiant? Just a different, title name?"
Yeah, it's definitely cut from the same cloth. We also found this other one, which I don't think there's a picture of, but it's called The Cloud Factory. It's like a volume 0 of this book that this girl's working on.
She did a Kickstarter, and
this picture just totally enthralled me. But
wow.
I don't usually pick up art books, but this whole book was just full of just enthralling scenery and art, and so try to see if I can frame this right. But basically, it was just absolutely astounding, and it's like when you pick up these art books from people, they're usually, the prices are pretty steep. But this one was just so interesting.
They're pretty steep.
Well, it's like $15 sometimes for 10 pages. So
I guess maybe as a artist, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, and
where it's like I feel like that's completely reasonable for a book.
Yeah, but sometimes you're like trying to decide, okay, between spending $15 on that or $15 on a full graphic novel.
Correct.
Or 3 comic books. But one thing we did find also yesterday Friday when I was taking around the kid I was showing to the show, we found this stand that had $4 graphic novels, which
that's one of the great things about going to conventions. Anyone out there, I would definitely say, like, if you get a chance, cons are great about getting the super deals.
A lot of places have half off.
A lot of places
off sales.
Oh yeah, a lot of these comic book shops will basically say like, "Hey, here's a convention deal where you can just go in and get this various series."
Yeah, I got this one here. It's a Thor graphic novel. I never really read Thor much, but it looked interesting. But the part that was really had me excited was this, which I think the picture will cycle through in a second. But it's the Iron Man 3 Prelude, and this was fun because it had a comic book set in the MCU, but it expanded on the Mandarin story and the actual Ten Rings terrorist group from Iron Man 1, which they didn't get into in the films. And so since it's in canon, you have this fun story where you can actually see more about plot lines that they didn't develop.
That's neat. Now, you're talking about when you walk around in the art books. I just want to get back to that because we've talked before that the lower you are on the totem pole, usually the better quality of work you push out to get noticed.
You have to. Yeah.
Do you guys? Is it hard as you're walking around? Like, so there's got to be like a bunch of extremely good younger artists coming up, just because I know you don't have unlimited funds. So,
well, I blew $100 on the first day. So if that's any indication, though 20 of that were which the first place we landed yesterday when I was with my group when I first arrived, we found this company doing exotic dice. And you could get dice made of topaz and gold and all these things. And I bought a $20 D20 made of aircraft aluminum, and I was excited because I bought metal dice before and they're really cool, but they land like a rock and they're going to dent your table and not roll well. And this thing rolled like a piece of plastic. So, and I got to use it last night at our game and the game event we ran, and it went really well. I was really happy with it.
That's really neat. By the way, for your metal dice, if you go to Wormwood Gaming, they have leather mats for you to protect your desk.
Nice.
And as a simple plug, if you use the checkout code BROS, they do free domestic shipping for everything you can buy. So.
Oh,
that's a really cool.
There you go. Yeah. So, but I one of the things that I like to do when I'm at the show is like to pick up indie books, and some of the ones I bought are scrolling through on the screen here, but. It's like if you're the guy making the indie books and you're not buying other people's indie books, it's a little not okay. But there's also some really interesting comic series you can run across. And, as we said, like the indie books can sometimes be way better than mainstream stuff. They can afford to take chances and,
well, a lot of times what happens is with mainstream, as you say it, there's a considerable amount of deadlines that definitely come up where it's basically get this product out and we need to think about the next product, where in some regards indie books do have a little bit more luxury of being able to actually produce a little bit more within time and a lot more TLC.
But they also have to deal with, like, if there's a minimum sales requirement, and there's also like Spider-Man and Batman, and you have to do stuff that sells, and there are things that just American comics just never do.
Right.
And
how many units per?
They're not as good. The real standout for me was sorry, Doc, you about to say something there?
No, I'm laughing because we've had this conversation offline. It's cracking me up. Go ahead.
Well, there's a book I just found this morning when I was coming in to set up to get ready for the show. There was a guy sitting here in the exact spot where we're sitting, and he was working on an art commission of Killmonger from Black Panther, and he was working. I got to talking to him, and he has this book he's doing. Here it is, and it's called Tuskegee Airmen, and it's kind of a silly idea in that it's very much like anime where you've got teenagers are the heroes, piloting the giant robots and the jet fighters. And it's all these kids who are basically the second generation people who were the previous fighter pilots. The parents were. And I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, but what sucked me in is that it basically turned out to be a giant robot book. and American comics never do giant robots well. And it's just a couple of black guys doing the comic, and obviously the characters are all black, which is totally not a big deal to me. But it's I'm really impressed that they are doing this basically what is traditionally a Japanese subject matter, and in an American comic. And you can definitely see the the influences from Macross Plus are here for sure. But the designs are absolutely badass, and I'm super excited to read the book. Here's another shot of it. The jet plane and the.
Dude, I'm loving that. I like the take on the Tuskegee Airmen because that was the African American military pilots from World War II.
Exactly, and I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I think just to give a shout out to them because I'm former military, so this touches my heart. Is they're the 332nd Fighter Group and the 477th Bombardment Group from the Army Air Forces, which we know as the Air Force today. So that's really cool. I like that. I might need to borrow that at one point, sir.
I'm sure we can work something out. That's actually an interesting one too, because when we were working on the Countermate comic series, one of the topics we wanted to get into was the desegregation of the military. And during World War II, the Army was very segregated, and so there were very few instances of blacks getting to fight, and they didn't even really do anything until they were so desperate for men that they finally, the people in charge finally had to put their racism aside, and so. We're going to get into that subject in the Countermate comic, of course, because they're in the exact same situation. But this was, very well. Just I guess came back on topic here. Like, I love giant robot comics. I'd like to do one someday, and getting to see one where it's being done well is really exciting. And I definitely would like to see where the story goes.
Oh yeah. I'm super glad about that. I keep laughing at it, and it's not always what you're saying. I just the picture that you sent me of the kid dressed up like Bob Ross is definitely killing me.
Oh, I saw that this morning.
Yeah, there was some fantastic cosplayers.
Yeah, this kid doing Bob Ross cosplay was great. So just kind of go through a couple other comic books we found. Here's one called Neverminds, which is going by, and it's one of those kind of example of like not everything is great. It's basically a superhero Black Ops comic, and it was kind of a fun idea. I was a little skeptical because it's all girls. Not that that's a bad thing, but there's a kind of a trend you run into in indie comics sometimes where they want to use eye candy to sell the book and not substance, and or like there is substance to it, but they don't trust the substance to be what carries the series, and this was one that unfortunately turned out to be all eye candy and no substance. I ended up putting the book down before I finished the first issue. But I did find this one here called Reactor, which I got going by the screen. And that's a fun premise. There's a company we found here called The Vault, which is a relatively new comic company. And unlike other indie companies that we talked to, they were actually super interested to see what we do. Usually, comic companies are a bit more guarded, and you never hear back from anybody, and I still may not. But they were really interested to see the comics that we make, and they've only been around for a year, and they've got like a line of a dozen comics they're putting out. So it's a pretty aggressive lineup. So I guess we'll have to see how good they are. But this series was kind of a tongue-in-cheek comic that didn't take itself very seriously, kind of like it knew what it was and just doubled down. And it's about a world where there was a vampire war, and the vampires basically won, and so the humans evacuated to another planet, and then they're coming back to Earth later because the vampires developed space travel, and we weren't successful in nuking them to oblivion. And then it turns out that the government actually left millions of humans behind and covered it up. So you've got this interesting political situation where the humans, the military that got sent in, think they're here to rescue the humans when the government doesn't plan to. So, and it's got giant robots, cyborgs, lots of vampires. It's definitely not a comic book taking itself very seriously, but it was definitely a fun read.
I want to apologize to anybody who's listening to this now or later. The what you're hearing is we had to find a live location. I think you guys found a Kinkos, right?
Did, yes.
That is correct.
And you're hearing people preparing shipping in the background.
Which is, it's great that they were generous enough to let us be here.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we're going to have a ghost in every episode.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes.
That's the lie.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Alex, did you find any interesting comics? I mean, I know you don't have any here with you today that you brought, but did you have anything that really caught your attention?
Yeah, there was definitely a series that, that black and white one.
Nomad.
This Nomad.
Yes. Yeah,
definitely want to do a shout out to them.
Yeah, we know them pretty well.
Yeah. They released their second trade paperback, and it's a great series, and it's like they definitely deserve some love.
Yeah, that guy's got an interesting idea where he basically wants to do black and white comics, which I really like. Our Thunderfrog book was released in black and white, but it's the idea that he's looking at it is that he's concerned about how expensive comics are, because when you're indie, you're putting out a graphic novel full color, it's hard to make it affordable. Like $25 is probably what our books are going to sell for, just because of how we have, the printing costs. And a lot of guys are in the same boat. And we've seen lots of indie guys where they do small print runs, and like their books have to sell between $6 to $8, which is pretty crazy. And so he deliberately did his book so he could sell a full graphic novel for $10.
Now, when you say book and comic book, I think there's a page difference we've talked about before, but can you?
Yeah, well, like in the industry, the term book is used interchangeably, but like you have your floppies, which are the regular like these things, right? Just make sure.
You're good.
Yeah, trying to get something, but like just it's basically your single issue, which is anywhere between 18 and 24 pages, and then you have your trade paperback, which is a collection of. Oh yeah, here we go. Like these things, which is a collection of 3 to 5 issues, and then they're usually part of an ongoing series. And then a graphic novel would, by definition, be a self-contained story, which would be kind of like this one that Chris Claremont did. And those can be any length.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't know that until you told me when we sat down, and I figured we'd get that on the show. I mean, people said they were learning things from this, so.
Well, it's like the term trade paperback and graphic novel are often used interchangeably, but in actuality, a graphic novel, if Alan Moore is to be believed, and I think he's probably got the right idea, is a self-contained story. Though sometimes you do have graphic novels which are part of an ongoing tale, but like each one still reads as a self-contained book, kind of like in Sandman. Sorry, long weekend. The first Sandman book was definitely written as a graphic novel because he didn't know if it would ever continue, and it ended up being a huge hit. And so they kind of went like that, where collecting story arcs in that way. But
one of the things that, going back to their series, I definitely wanted to say was like
Sandman.
Oh no, Nomad.
Yes,
was like. It's been really great, like pleasure of like being able to talk to them, see their passion, see like their level of creativity. Just being able to talk, like for example, to Todd, which is their artist, and just kind of as another artist, basically kind of nerding out and basically talking about like things from the 80s and just other things about art and whatnot. That's like one of the great things about like going to these conventions is basically like, hey, this is our similarities, or like these are our passions and interests, or like, hey, have you ever thought about like using these type of materials like Copic markers, for example, or like watercolors, or utilizing these other materials. And that gets that really great bond together of like not just being a customer and a provider of material, but like artist to artist, or like creator to creator.
No, it's really cool. You were talking about well, first off, do we have any information from them? Like, do we have their Twitter account or something that we can plug right now?
Which one are we talking about?
Nomad.
We can certainly get it. I don't have it handy.
I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put it in the show notes later. It's probably not a big deal. You can probably look up Nomad on Google and probably figure it out from there.
They do have their stuff on Amazon, and they're definitely looking for like some great reviews. So it's like, give them some love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask you guys about the. I'm sorry, just let me get this out because my brain doesn't work like that. We were talking about black and white and color and keeping the cost down. I know that I am. There are some that are in black and white. I'm totally enthralled with them. They're beautiful comics, and personally, I have tattoos that I have black and white because I'm afraid color would ruin them. Do people do it more for the money, or are there some instances where people are doing black and white because they think it has a better quality to it?
Well,
I think it's
that's a mixed thing.
It depends.
Okay, one at a time.
So within part of the experience as like doing comic books as a artist, as just for personal regards of like improving myself as a creative person, and also being a business person being the co-owner of Miniature Dragon Studios, there's definitely some various factors within that. Like, as a personal level, it's just, I can basically do like, say, for example, the 24-hour comic book challenge, completely black and white, much easier, actually get it done, 24 pages within 24 hours. And, it's just fun to do, enjoyable, and it makes the challenge actually doable, not doing it in color. There's certain projects where it's like, okay, if I want to utilize more detail, I definitely want it to be black and white, because sometimes that color can actually not necessarily muddy it up, but lose some of its various aspects when color's added. I don't have to use as much details within like illustrating it and inking it if it's going to get colored. Okay.
Well, yeah, and actually just from the business side of it, when we put out our Thunderfrog book originally, that was in black and white, and there's a number of reasons for that. Some of it's economic because, like, for example, you can have as much as $1 difference in the price of the comic book versus color versus black and white. Plus, there's more expense you have to pay for the color. But to get a separate artist, to do the colors. But there's another factor in it, of course, is that being a huge fan of the original black and white Ninja Turtles comics, which were back when the turtles could still kill people, and they were admittedly, like, the stories were much cooler and much more, they took it more seriously, and I think they were better stories in that era. But how you go about a black and white comic book is completely different than the way you do color, as Alex was just saying, because
I would actually like to add about the Ninja Turtle part. So for Ninja Turtles, they did do reprints. So they've done black and white, and they've done colored versions.
Yeah.
To my opinion, at least, the black and white were much more superior, because the marriage of like how it was done, of having the black and white and then having the color, just didn't work well. It basically wasn't a good marriage. It was kind of clunky. The black and white was definitely much more superior looking.
Well, if you knew you were going to color it, you would have done it very differently.
Right. Yeah. That's part of the process also.
Yeah. And so, the Thunderfrog, fortunately we have an artist where his art would look good in both directions, which doesn't always happen that way. But and we are looking to do a graphic novel release, for the first graphic novel in color as well. But like, just from the economic standpoint, I wanted to be able to lower the price of the comic book as well, and then end up discovering it didn't matter. People, if people like the book, they'll pay the right color price. I said cover price for a color book, right? Well, I guess that's works either way. Anyways,
the color price for the cover book, is that where you're going with that?
Yeah. And remember, this is live.
Weekend at the show, so. But yeah, it depends. I mean, there are a lot of guys that do make it. They don't admit it, but it's entirely economic. Because they are doing it out of their own pocket, and they have to fund their book, and it literally can cut the price of the book in half if you don't put it in color.
It's interesting to me. It's just me. When we talked about starting the show, I'm all about the indie comics. I like the stuff nobody knows about. For me, I love the art. Yep. Speaking of which, did you guys run into what am I trying to think of? You guys run into any artists from like Paizo or Wizards of the Coast, or because we're all in Seattle?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So because the two of us are looking at different things and our various different hobbies and whatnot, and also just kind of how we socialize.
Yeah.
There's actually a good number of various individuals that worked on some of the classic WotC's like Magic the Gathering, a lot of the original card art. There was some fantastic individuals that worked on like, some of the Dungeons and Dragons books during like second edition going up to third. And I don't think anyone here was from like fourth or fifth.
Well, it's also true that you talk to artists on Artist Alley and you don't know the length of their career either. You're talking to some guy and you don't know that he's the guy that worked on this book, and you just, your art looks cool, and you get into a conversation, you walk away, and you just, met the biggest celebrity of your life and you didn't even know who he was, because the thing I was about to mention earlier is like, what Alex just touched on was that, like the con's pretty big and you can't see everything. And there were also times yesterday when we discovered that we missed somebody that we knew because the crowd was so thick you couldn't even see him. Oh. And, we're walking around Artist Alley trying to, we're on a mission. We're looking for something very specific. And then we walked right past a friend of ours and we completely, we missed his booth, which is crazy. It's literally like sardines in some places.
Well, all I'll say on that is a quote from Game of Thrones Game of Thrones is shame.
Yeah. Shame. But yeah, we both of us had different agendas here. So I'm doing certain things, Alex doing certain things, and we like bump into each other periodically and then keep going.
And I think if anybody worked on any 4th edition stuff, they probably wouldn't mention it from Dungeons and Dragons. But the tabletop conversation, this is a comic book review show, so let's stay on that topic.
Well, I mean, I don't know, because like my Countermate book is definitely an RPG book.
Well,
so
well, there is definitely been more and more cross pollination between just the simple fact of like how different IPs are starting to mix together. Everybody's thinking of that transmedia in the respects of here's a comic adaptation, here's a television adaptation, here's a movie adaptation, here's a role-playing, here's a video game, here's toys.
Yeah, and we're doing a comic book right now which is based upon an RPG film series. And then, so, we're definitely straddling the middle ground. And,
and stuff that was inspired by role-playing.
Absolutely. And in fact, last night we actually did an RPG session event, and it was actually great because one of the actors that was from the film series dropped in to play with us.
Brian Lewis.
Yeah, and I didn't even know he was at the show. And Alex
and that's why I...
Yeah, Alex dragged him over, so that was great.
That's awesome. So we got less than 2 minutes, so let's start wrapping this up. I want to start with what you guys want to push. The last time we did ConwayTheSeries.com. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to share.
Well, we did just launch the Countermate comic series, which is at countermate.com. And you can read, I think, the first 7 pages of the comic. We'll be updating another one on Tuesday. And we also have RPG content to go along with the release. So if you like Pathfinder,
Oh, yeah. And the fantastic thing about the role players that are watching this comic review, you might actually really enjoy the gamers that Countermate is attached to.
Yeah. Check out the gamers on YouTube. But there are links to the films on the website. But we're huge fans, which is basically how I got the deal. So
that's awesome. As always, you can follow us or join us on Discord. I'm on there. I think Alex we'll get Alex on there. Don't worry about it. But we'll get us all on there so you can chat with us and tell us what you think at all times. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at MD Reviewcast. You can email us at mdreviewcast@gmail.com. As far as all that stuff's going, we're on every Sunday from 4 to 4:30. We love you all. I want to say read more comics and remember to keep it nerdy and live your dreams. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Doc.
Oh, you guys are very welcome. And later.